If you ask anyone working within the hip-hop industry today who the most influential artist is at this very moment, they'll probably all give you the same answer.
Drake!
If you would have asked people this same question 5 years ago, you still probably would have gotten the same answer. The guy doesn't just stop at rap. He's branched out into a number of different ventures given his acting career has allowed him to sharpen his charm and networking chops. You don't have to like him to admit he's achieved an almost legendary status as an artist in general. And it isn't just limited to hip-hop. It's hard to put into words the sheer scale of Drake's success. The sold-out arenas, the constantly charting albums and singles, the well over a decade of relevancy and commercial success that's nearly beyond comprehension. His fans will fight tooth and nail to argue that he's the greatest hip-hop artist of all time. And while that may be subjective, his numbers do well to confirm that claim. Drake is the best-selling digital artist in the United States. He's broken a number of Guinness World Records and is consistently a topic of conversation amongst both his fans and haters alike. Not bad for a guy who's not even from here. He's Canadian, as we all know. While growing up in a less than ideal environment and on the dying end of a struggling acting career, he threw himself into music. Now, his father had always been a musician but was never around for most of Drake's upbringing. The roots he had to plant were the result of his own initiatives. It was through these initiatives that he met the man who would change the course of his entire life. Noah 40 Shebib. Originally nicknamed 40 Days and 40 Nights due to his incredibly taxing and sleepless work ethic, Shebib would eventually come to be known simply as 40. During a recording at a local studio in 2005, Drake and 40 would meet for the first time, exchanging numbers and eventually losing touch, as is common in an industry so oversaturated.
I called him, he didn't answer. I hit him again, doesn't answer. Another couple weeks, I'll just go. Did you talk to Drake? I'm like, nah, he never hit me back, bro. Like, what do you mean?
They would eventually cross paths once more at Drake's video shoot for his 2007 song Replacement Girl, where 40 would pass him a tape of his beats, and the rest, as they say, is history. But 40 never began with the intentions of becoming a producer. He, like Drake, began his relationship with the entertainment industry as a child actor, landing roles in shows like Goosebumps and The Virgin Suicides. Upon realizing the acting thing wasn't going to pay the bills, he began DJing under the name DJ Chili. It was around this time when he began crafting his own beats. He'd eventually make the shift from DJ to producer, working with a number of notable Toronto artists. His big break came in 2009 when he recorded and mixed every song off the album So Far Gone, a mixtape that set Drake on a steep trajectory towards success and would define his sound going forward. Together, they would also create the label and clothing line October's Very Own, alongside Drake's manager Oliver El Khatib. Despite dipping his toes in a number of other ventures, 40 never strayed from the primary role of being Drake's producer, a commitment we haven't seen paralleled in nearly all of hip-hop. Let's analyze the role of a producer for a second. As corny as this sounds, producers are the architects of music. They're the backbone of trendiness and feel. I think a lot of us consider the vast majority of mainstream music to have little to no substance. The radio is filled with catchy tunes that have words jumbled together by a dozen or so writers to make the most commercially appealing song possible. Drake is kind of that at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I have listened to countless hours of his songs. Take Care was full of high school anthems, Nothing Was the Same was absolute heat for the college demographic, and even Her Loss is just, even Fantano liked it.
This album has quite a few bangers on it. Well produced, well performed, very catchy.
But I have a hard time believing any of these albums would have charted as well as they did had, DJ Mustard produced it. But what does he actually say or do that we haven't seen or that hasn't been bitten from another genre? Now, I'm not saying every artist has to be like Kendrick Lamar or lyrical spiritual miracle Eminem, but the vast majority of his songs chart because they're commercially targeted. And he hasn't always focused on mass appeal. Take Care had a significantly more melancholic vibe and was essentially an open diary detailing the struggles of fame and overindulgence in women. It still went on to become one of the best-selling and highly acclaimed hip-hop albums of all time. Drake has a range of songs and albums that all seem to trend consistently, even bringing alternative genres into the limelight. He's taken a number of risks and they've almost always paid off. Even when he flops, he still manages to land softly. But here's the thing, it's not him. None of this, aside from his soft vocals, public presence, and consistent work ethic, is him. All of this stems from the mind of one man, Noah 40 Shebib. Now I know this seems like dramatically over the top praise, but let's just dive a little deeper. 40 almost exclusively works with Drake. His reasoning for this is that it's too exhausting to have to match energies and engage with new artists when neither of you are familiar with one another. This is understandable, but the sheer number of songs 40's credited on is insane. It's at or around 80% of all Drake songs. There's not a chord or beat that passes through OVO Studios without his ear being put to it first. This is an insane figure when you consider Drake has achieved 11 #1 albums on the Billboard 200 with a total of 293 Hot 100 hits, the vast majority of which produced by 40. Now to their credit, they're an incredibly easygoing duo. They're constantly praising one another, be it in interviews or songs themselves. 40 is even extremely humble about taking any credit for Drake's success. In a Rolling Stone article published in June of 2020, 40 says, "I don't like talking about Drake's music. It's not my music. I don't want to offend my friend or speak out of turn, right? It's not my project, it's his. I'm respectful of my best friend who I made all this music with, and I protect his legacy and his right to defend that legacy." The bromance is kind of adorable, honestly, but I can't help but wonder, where would Aubrey Drake Graham be without the Take Care track list or So Far Gone or Thank Me Later? He could have certainly rode the shadow of Lil Wayne in his prime, but you can only follow the feature wave for so long. You're going to need to put out your own stuff to stay relevant. If you take a look at the consistency of output, it's kind of shocking. I mean, it's one man after all. There are top commercial artists like Beyonce who work with dozens of producers and writers because there's a need to diversify your style and experiment. It's just in a creative's nature. 40, however, can adapt to trends and study demographics with laser-like precision, and deliver track after track to fit whatever vision Drake has for a project. But 40's role as the backbone to Drake's discography did not come without its cost. At 22 years old, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. He learned he could lose mobility at any time and was essentially living inside of a ticking time bomb. During one event on tour, his face would go numb and he would shake uncontrollably, promptly leading him to seek medical attention. To make matters worse, for most of his life and since his diagnosis, he wasn't taking any medications to help fight this disease. This resulted in about a third of his brain going completely dead up until this point. It didn't help that his MS was thrust into the limelight during Drake's brief beef with Pusha T, collateral damage in an already ruthless back and forth. 40 took the beef as well as anyone could, but admitted it left him feeling pretty upset. It isn't just his physical health that is a constant battle for the acclaimed producer.
I know I'm intelligent enough to be able to figure this out to the point that I could afford to pay a car note.
40 is very self-deprecating, never acknowledging the sheer scale of his talent or contribution to Drake's catalog. He claims he doesn't like any of his music, beats, or mixes, stating that he simply got lucky and likened the music industry to playing the lottery. Despite a cemented status within the industry and a massive level of success, 40 still treats himself like the struggling kid from Toronto, unwilling to acknowledge his talent or bask in any of the glory. Maybe that's what keeps him grounded. Maybe that's what makes him so talented. This dismissal of any credit or praise is what allows him to keep his head down and work. Rap is filled with its fair share of flexing and delusion. His right-hand man, Drake, is no exception. It seems 40's content behind the scenes, pulling the strings of greatness from the comfort of a small studio with a formula that doesn't just work, but excels. Now, whether or not this is good for his legacy is a different story, but I don't think it seems to bother him. I think he's just content doing what he loves. I mean, you gotta respect that.